Hey there, Street Dogs. This is Yuan, and welcome to the first episode of Street Drifters FM, where we talk about the art and philosophy of street photography. For this episode, we'll be talking about street mindsetting. Let's get started. Alright, so let's start this episode with a quotation from a book called Human, All Too Human, A Book of Free Spirits by Friedrich Nietzsche. Now Nietzsche writes, "None of the people have any real interest in a science or only begin to be enthusiastic about it when they themselves have made discoveries in it." I'm sure by now you've had some sort of education or training with street photography, whether it may be from a friend, from a mentor, or from the World Wide Web. I mean, nowadays, the internet offers a bunch of information on what street photography is and what street photography is not, as well as the type of gear you should shoot with. Now, usually, the type of gear that we often choose comes from the influence of the particular education or training we've had. However, sometimes we find ourselves questioning whether the gear that we use and the gear that we want to use will give us the result or the satisfaction that we want. We think that if we were given a different camera gear or a different camera system, we won't be taking photographs that's acceptable or, well, maybe near acceptable to our eyes. This idea ultimately limits us to be more dependent on our gear. I mean, sure, our gear sometimes play a big part in the images that we make. I say sometimes, mainly because the gear shouldn't dictate what type of images we should make. If we do that, letting the gear decide, letting the gear dictate the images, then we're not photographers. We're merely slaves. Now, whatever gear you may have or may want to have shouldn't hinder you from expressing your happiness or your creativity whenever you go out on the street. I say shoot with the gear that is readily available to you. I know you've heard this all before, but have you asked why? Sure, there are practical reasons as to why, but my answer to that is the artist precedes art. Now, like painting, a brush will not paint a masterpiece all by itself. A poem will never be a poem without someone writing it. A photograph will never exist without the one behind the shutter taking the photograph. A hand will not move without the will of the brain to move it. This brings us to our first point, our will to make visual stories. Gear should matter less in street photography. Our camera, our gear is simply a tool to our creativity. We use it to make something that appeals to us. Now, street photography, as you all may know, is a very strict and difficult art form, and that the tool that we have at our disposal should help us tell a visual story. And by our will to make these visual stories, we may know a little bit as to why we've taken the photos that we normally take. Now, with that answer, we are presented with another problem. How do we do that exactly? How do we make visual stories? How are we supposed to reflect in our photograph visual stories? To answer that, let me ask you a simple question. Have you had that experience wherein you try retelling a story told to you, and while you were retelling it, you tried to make it sound somewhat interesting? Alright? Another example would be whenever we watch a film. Let's say a Marvel movie. Now, usually, they show you, or they show us, the audience, in frames, the journey of the character or the characters within the movie. How the characters interacted with each other, going through and pushing through with their journey, is something of interest to the vast majority of the audience. Hence, we usually see the frames shifting from different perspectives, different directions and angles, just to tell us the story of the character's journey. Interest. The appeal. We see something that is of interest to us and we take a photo of that. Or so we try. We usually go out, I'm guilty of this, we usually go out and hunt for interesting photos, which is actually good. But for the purposes of today's episode, should also be lessened or eliminated whenever we go shoot the streets. Now, before I tell you why that is, let's pause for a quick break.
SDFM. The important thing in life is not what you get, but what you throw out. Hi, I'm Yuan. Welcome to Street Drifters FM. Let's talk street. SDFM.
Okay, so we've talked about the will of taking photos and the appeal of a particular scene to us, the interest. Before we took a break, I left you on a note that we should lessen or eliminate our desire to hunt for photographs. Why? My answer to that is we need to empty our minds. Now, what does emptying our minds mean? What does it mean? What does it mean in the context of street photography? Of course, when I say empty our minds, I don't mean to literally empty our minds. Probably I'd say think less, but emptying our minds seemed to sound better in my opinion. So yeah. I got this idea mainly because I think most of us, we tend to think a lot when we go out and take photos. We think of things like the composition, the exposure, the background, the focus, the subject, the point of interest. I mean, you get it, right? So many things. The list goes on. It's as if we're making going out and take street photos a chore. Kind of like going on a grocery or supply run where we have a checklist. In this case, we make a mental checklist, which is technically okay, but I think that idea steals us from the experience. When it does, I think that we become hard on ourselves, and we probably say we're not good in this art form, we suck at this particular art form, blah blah blah, etc., etc. I mean, if you think about it, of course, for sure, we'll bounce back at some point, right? That's true. But let me ask you, how long does your sulking, or how long does our sulking time usually last before we go out with the same enthusiasm and shoot some street photographs again? 1 day, 2 days, a week, a month, a year? We don't know for sure. Anyway, here's an idea. What if we eliminate the checklist? What if we shoot in full auto, or probably one of the priority programs? Does it make us a lesser photographer or not? Will it be good? Will it be bad? Hear me out. Now, as a photographer, as an artist, as we are, we know composition by heart. How? We know what is considered to be a pleasing image. Whether it may be coming from an internal source or from an external source. We know what a pleasing image is. We know what we want to see. We know when we want to see it. We know how we want to see it. We know composition. It's just that, one, we doubt ourselves. We doubt if we're doing a good job visually, or two, say that's wrong, mainly because the conventional composition, blah blah blah, etc., etc. I mean, come on, guys. We're street photographers. As such, if we really love street photography, the art form, then the mundaneness of everything is interesting. Therefore, to see something that is of interest is not really a difficult task. Everything is important. Every angle is important. And when everything is important, chaos. We don't know what we want. Now, to further elaborate, or to further discuss this, I recently saw a movie about Soul Lighter. It was a documentary entitled In No Great Hurry. I really love that movie. In that movie, I forgot which part though, Soul said this order has a certain kind of charm and comfort that not everyone, or that no one appreciates. He further added that to know everything is not good, and to be in a state of pleasant confusion sometimes can be very satisfying, especially if you're slightly crazy. As street photographers, we are inherently crazy. I mean, who takes photos of people they don't know in the street? Who asks permission to take someone's photograph on the street? Sometimes we have these techniques how to blend in, we play dumb. Yeah, I'd say we're inherently crazy. And therefore, since we're inherently crazy, a crazy idea such as emptying our minds may not even be that crazy of an idea. I mean, think about it. When we go out to take street photos, and then we're not getting the photos that we wanted during that particular photo walk, we freak out in so many levels. That is a universal truth. On top of being crazy, we are control freaks. We are control freaks in a variety of ways. We somehow find it difficult to make photographs without controlling everything: shutter speed, aperture, the background. Probably sometimes probably we wish we could control lights, but we can't. It's a street. I think that instead of waiting for that decisive moment to just come our way, we force ourselves on that decisive moment. We find it, and like a frightened deer, we let it slip past us on the opportune moment. Why the hell will we do that? Because we're crazy. We're crazy to think that that particular opportune moment was the only decisive moment. I think we should stop chasing the moment. Even if it goes away forever, according to Henry Cartier-Bresson, whom everybody loves. I think the more we chase that moment, the more we lose respect to our skills, and the more we lose the other decisive moments and the thrill of taking street photographs. I mean, let the moment present itself and let yourselves enjoy the walk, experience the street, and then document some. I mean, just try it. Rewire your mind whenever you go out on your next street photograph walk. Just empty your mind, think less, and then when you go out, take with you the will. Be very enthusiastic with taking photos that tell stories. Again, everything is important, everything is of interest. Take whatever photo you want from the street, from that particular walk. Again, just empty your mind. Just enjoy the walk. Who knows? Who knows, right? It might just work for you as it worked for me. That concludes episode 1 of Street Drifters FM. For the next episode, we'll be talking about the concept of beauty and the search for beauty in relation to street photography. Subscribe now so that you'll be notified when the second episode comes out. Till then, see you next time. Ciao.
SDFM.